Live
Isn't this pre-recorded?
Shut up.
from his bedroom.
Did you say his bedroom?
Why, yes. Yes, I did.
Oh, he is such a bad boy.
Say, man, what this show about anyway?
Politics. Religion.
Say what? Don't you know you're not allowed to talk about that stuff?
It's time to break some rules then. Prepare to get triggered and be made uncomfortable because here's your host, the Jace Man, Jace Barnett. And this is Those Two Things.
Welcome back, guys. It's time once again to talk about those two things that you're just not supposed to talk about. But that's what we do because we think it's important to talk about all the things that they tell you not to talk about. And boy, do we have some big stuff to cover today. It is June 24th. It is a Friday where I call home. It is a day for the Cardinals to play the Cubs, so much to celebrate in this world. And by the way, get used to seeing me in Cardinals gear on Cardinals versus Cubs days. It's just gonna happen, so get used to it. I know it has nothing to do with politics or religion. Maybe it has something to do with religion. I feel like my Cardinals fandom is sort of a religion. But get used to it. If you root for someone else, you're wrong. I'm right. Sorry, not sorry. Now, also, with it being June 24th, I guess I want to start, and it's a great segue to talk about the items of the day. Okay, so June 24th was my grandmother's birthday, my mom's mom, and she passed away in December of 2020, along with my grandfather and my father and an uncle and an aunt. December of 2020 was pretty bad for us. We lost a lot of people in a very, very short amount of time. But June 24th was Grandma's birthday. So, happy birthday to you, Grandma. And in light of one of the things we're going to talk about, Ro, I want to say that my grandmother did find faith and she did come to a relationship with Jesus Christ that was late in her life. She was not a Christian woman until her last 15 years on the planet. But she did come to him in retirement, and then she was a very dedicated Christian lady for her last few years. But she was not a Christian when I was growing up. When I lived with them for a while, I lived with my grandparents for quite some time and didn't live with my parents, and they weren't a Christian. My grandparents weren't Christians then. I was. I would offer, send them invitations to come to church with me. They would always pass. A lot of other things like that, but it's neither here nor there. The important thing is she did find Christ, and as important in relate to today, one of the things I want to say is, babies, you're welcome. We apologize that it took us nearly 50 years to start looking out for you and protecting you. But Grandma, for your birthday, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for bringing 9 children into this world and raising 8 of them into adulthood. Not many of them left now. Again, we've lost just about everybody, sadly, in the last few years. But on behalf of them, hopefully I can remember all my aunts and uncles' names being put on the spot here without having rehearsed this. It's a big family. I'm going to go down the line here and send you a personal happy birthday from each one of them, and thank you for giving them life. So we'll start with the matriarch of the clan, the one who would have been the oldest, but unfortunately she only got to spend one day on Earth. So, but from baby Shirley, Grandma, thank you, happy birthday, and thank you for giving baby Shirley life. For my late Uncle Wayne, happy birthday, Grandma, and thank you for giving him life. Even though you weren't a Christian, again, I hear a lot of times people say, hey, only you Christian people are pro-life. Only you Christian people feel this way. But you weren't a Christian woman and you valued life, and I appreciate that, and I thank you on their behalf. So thank you for giving Uncle Wayne life. And then the twins, my mom and my Aunt Linda. So yeah, my mom is gone. I know you guys are together now, and Aunt Linda's still here. She's one of the few remaining members of the clan. But on behalf of the twins, happy birthday, Grandma, and thank you for giving them life. I find myself starting to get choked up. Sorry. Uh, on behalf of my Aunt Janet, happy birthday, Grandma. And thank you for giving Aunt Janet life. On behalf of my Aunt Cindy, thank you, Grandma, for giving her life, and a happy birthday to you. On behalf of, let's see, who have I not named? I don't know. On behalf, did I say Cindy? I'm not sure. Marcia, Uncle Howard, Aunt Kay. I feel like I've got everybody in there. If I forgot someone, then I'm terribly embarrassed and feel terrible for it. But again, it wasn't rehearsed. I just decided to do this. Happy birthday to you, Grandma, from all of them. And again, thank you for giving all of them life so that I could get to know them, that they could all be a part of my life. By the way, Mom, thanks for giving me life. Thanks, Mom. And Grandma, thanks for being a mom to me. You gave Mom life so that she could give me life. And you helped protect me and were there for my life and helped to raise me. And so thank you, both of you. And again, happy birthday, Grandma. All right. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit. I feel like right now we should stay on the Roe v. Wade train, and maybe I will. I can do whatever I want. It's my show. But I had planned to kind of go in order. You know, yesterday there was the Second Amendment stuff. Today there's this Roe v. Wade stuff. But to be honest, the Roe decision just came down, and I'm so ecstatic. I'm so happy that it's hard for me to think about pretty much anything else right now. It's definitely like something. I would say that the abortion topic, the pro-life agenda. I am a very calm and cool, collected customer, and I can discuss pretty much any topic rationally and logically without emotion with people who agree with me and people who don't agree with me. It usually doesn't matter. I can talk and I can stay level-headed, and I don't get into fisticuff mode about any topic. If there's any topic that is the exception to that rule, it is the topic of abortion. It may be the only topic that I have trouble discussing in a non-emotional way. I can't think clearly about it because my mind is literally boggled that people believe, any people. It doesn't, again, the pro-choice movement, which they're not really pro-choice, but the pro-choice movement is you know, they tell you that it's only the far right Christians who are pro-life. That's not true. I've met a lot of non-Christians, a lot of non-Bible believers who want to protect life in the womb. But it boggles my mind that anyone out there couldn't or wouldn't. It is literally lost on me how we don't all feel this drive to protect life and to protect unborn life. I mean, I feel like every person in the world sort of loves an underdog story. We all sort of want to protect those that can't protect themselves. Most of us walking around love children, and even older kids like younger kids. You'll see them at schools a lot of time. Yeah, there's bullies out there in the playground and so on and so forth, but a lot of times you'll see the bigger kids looking out for the little kids, or they'll see the little kids do something and they find it just as cute and laughable as we adults do. So it seems like the younger the child, the more that we have this innate thing inside of us that wants to cuddle them and nurture them and care for them and protect them. And with that being there, like, I really can't figure out how there's anybody out there not driven by a strong desire to protect and defend those who are literally the most defenseless. They can't battle for themselves. And anyway, it's crazy. But so the decision comes down, and after nearly 50 years of a decision that never should have been decided in the Supreme Court, the decision that was reached definitely should not have come down. it has been overturned. And I know there's going to be an awful lot of people who are upset about this. And I'm wondering what the fallout is going to look like and how contentious and violent things may be and so on and so forth. I am ecstatic, but I know that there could potentially be a very, very wild ride ahead. But I feel like this is also a good time for us to talk about something that maybe we want to talk about. And the maybe we want to talk about isn't just this topic of abortion and whether or not we have a right to it and whether or not life should be protected. Don't don't worry, we're going to talk a lot about that. This episode is probably going to be 85% talking about life. But there's something else that I don't want to miss here, especially when we're talking about the Supreme Court ruling. I'm going to push back on everyone. It's something I do anyway. It's kind of my specialty, is to kind of shove everybody. People who agree with me, people who don't agree with me. I push everyone. I push myself, so I figure if I can push me, I should be allowed to push back on everyone else as well. I feel like that's fair. I'm not asking something of others that I don't do myself. I'm not asking others to explore things internally that I'm unwilling to do. So I think it's only fair that I can push back on others if I'm willing to push on me. And so, one of the concepts I want to talk about is, as I was watching the news this morning, I heard a lot of people trying to give credit to Donald Trump for this victory. And if you want to, fine, so be it. And talk about how it was great credit to him for doing what he said he was going to do and appoint pro-life judges and so on and so forth. And you know what? I'm glad there are pro-life judges. I'm glad there's pro-life people everywhere. I think everyone should be pro-life. Again, my mind is boggled by this. But when I supported, like, Justice Kavanaugh, we remember how contentious that nomination and confirmation was. When I was speaking up and defending him, even though you will not, I am telling you, you will not find a bigger pro-life guy than me. I'm not sure there's a more pro-life person on the planet. In spite of that, when I was defending Justice Kavanaugh, I wasn't defending him as a pro-life person or as someone that thought that he would come in there and overturn Roe v. Wade because he's a pro-life person. To be entirely honest, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think about judicial philosophy. And this is something, I feel like should be universal. I feel like we should all agree on this, but we don't, because we're such a divided people that we only want to support people who do agree with us. And if people don't agree with us on the issue, then it takes swings. But I'm here to tell you that a judge's responsibility is to basically be neutral. And as far as personal philosophy goes, they almost need to be their personal philosophies almost need to be agnostic about every issue. And if they're not completely agnostic, which I don't think you can be unless you're just empty-headed, you have to have an uncanny ability, if you're going to do your job as a judge appropriately and what you've been tasked with, you have to separate your personal viewpoints from the law. In the case of the Supreme Court, from the Constitution. You can't, if you are a pro-lifer and you tell me that that's going to dictate how you're going to go in there and rule, then even though I will have a personal bias and I will want to say, yeah, put that fella in the seat, or put that lady in the seat, the truth is that person shouldn't be in the seat. The exact reverse of that is true as well. If you say that you are 100% pro-choice, or maybe you actually say what people don't say, even though that's really what they mean, and say, I'm 100% pro-abortion, and I will rule accordingly, that person should be disqualified from that position as well. Not disqualified because Jace doesn't like it, not disqualified because it will upset a ton of people, not disqualified because it could start riots in the streets, but disqualified because they are telling you that they cannot be impartial and interpret the law based on what it says, not based upon how they feel. It is not a judge's job to look at how they feel about an issue and then rule. It is a judge's job to look at what the law says and then through their interpretation of what that means to rule on what their interpretation states. It has nothing to do with their feelings. It shouldn't have anything to do with their feelings anyway. And so, regardless of the issue, whether we're talking Roe v. Wade or we're talking something else, if they are ruling based on how they feel, they're not qualified for that seat. And I don't care if they agree with your opinion or disagree with your opinion. So if you're saying, if you're giving credit to Donald Trump, which by the way he didn't hand out this ruling, but if you're giving credit to Donald Trump because he appointed pro-life judges, and then we got pro-life judges who made this decision, I would say that if you're speaking that way, you're actually not speaking in support of the judicial system. You're not speaking out in support of you're not speaking out in support of the three separate branches of government that we have, because you are speaking out as a person who has your own natural bias, which it's okay that you have it. I have it too. And appreciating that decisions are coming down that mimic your own thoughts and feelings. That's not why we have three separate branches of government. And specifically, the judges, again, they're there to read the law, interpret its true meaning, and then rule accordingly. They are to divorce themselves from their personal opinions. So if you are saying that their personal opinions came into play, that's a dangerous, dangerous thing to be advocating for, especially if you're claiming victory for it. Because if their personal opinions did come into play when they decided, then they actually failed their job. They didn't do their job. So I'm going to sit here and be of the belief that while they may or may not be pro-life people, it had nothing to do with their ruling. Same thing when we talk about the Second Amendment, same thing when we talk about the other decisions that are going to come down. I haven't really seen too many of the other decisions. There's a lot that is coming down and being ruled on. So we'll have plenty to talk about in the next few episodes. But yeah, it is not a judge's job to tell you how they feel or to rule based on how they feel, even when the way they feel agrees with you. So don't celebrate if you think they did that. In fact, if you think they did that, wag your finger at them. Tell them not to do that. Tell them that's wrong. We should not appoint people to the bench who are going to rule based on their own personal compass. That's wrong. So I'm assuming that they did not reach the decision because they're pro-life people. I'm assuming they reached the decision for exactly what it states. And I think in the next one, what we may do is we may actually get a hold of the official letter, the official ruling that was handed out, and maybe go through it. Maybe it will bore some of you to death. Maybe some of you will find it interesting. I don't know. I'd find it interesting. Again, my show. I'm going to do what I want. But maybe, I'm not saying we will, but maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll look through it and pick it apart, what the decision actually states and reads and why. But from the clips and bits and pieces that I've seen, and I don't know how closely today's official ruling looks like the one that was leaked, I'm hearing that it's pretty much the same thing and not much has changed. I don't know that for sure. That's hearsay, that's rumor. We're going to take a look, I think. But from the original thing that was leaked, what I liked about it as an American was different than as a constitutionalist. What I liked about it as an American and a constitutionalist was quite different from what I liked about it as a pro-life guy. As a pro-life guy, what I like about overturning Roe v. Wade is, hey, more babies are safe. Sounds like a good thing. As a constitutionalist, as an American, what I liked about it was the language was basically saying that the reason this needs to be overturned isn't because abortion is wrong. The reason it needs to be overturned is that you don't have a constitutional right to abortion. This is not something that is provided within the Constitution. It's not something the Constitution has ever provided. There's no law on the books that says you should be allowed to do this. And there's no reason for us sitting here on the federal bench to tell the rest of the world what they can and can't do, and the rest of the world being all Americans. The language basically also states that if you actually want abortion in this country, you can still have abortion. We're not saying that abortion is banned. And that's something else that people need to understand about the overturning of Roe v. Wade. It does not ban abortion. It states that there's no constitutional right to abortion. And some of you, depending upon how you feel about the ruling, you'll say, well, that's the same thing. It's actually not the same thing. What all this really does is it now takes it back to the state side so that citizens of each state can decide whether abortion is something they want within their borders or not. And they can allow their people to vote on that. That's called legislation. That's the way it's supposed to work. Essentially what Roe v. Wade did was it created a law, which is not what the court's supposed to do, and it ruled on something and created a law that had never been voted on. And yielded something to people that they did not possess. It is not the court's job to give you rights nor take rights away from you. It's the court's job to look at what rights you possess and then rule on whether or not something is in violation of those rights. So the new court looks at it and says, we don't see where you have a constitutional right for this. Now, if you still want abortion, Americans, here's something you can do. Missourians, where I call home, you can go out there and lobby your local representatives. You can go out there and say, hey, let's put these ballots let's put this initiative on the ballot box, and let's let Missouri voters decide whether they want abortion or not, whether they want open rules on abortion, anything goes, or whether they want to have restrictive things or something. I don't dodge how I feel. I'm pro-life as pro-life gets. I'm not for abortion at the 12-month mark. I'm not for abortion at the 10-month mark. I'm not for abortion at the 5-week mark. I am not for abortion at the 2-week mark. I'm not for abortion on the day 1 mark or conception. I believe that it is life, and life is precious, and it should be born if it can be. If something happens to it naturally, well, we can't do anything about that. But we shouldn't be stopping it. So, now, regardless, again, of how I personally feel, I also understand that I live in a state with 5 million people. It isn't just about how this guy feels. If the rest of Missouri gets together and votes differently than I do about this issue, then I can be as upset as I have in my whole life about Roe v. Wade being allowed, and we create laws that allow abortion. I'll be upset. I'll be angry. I'll have my fist shaking, and I'll say it's wrong, wrong, wrong. And I will mean it, and I will believe it. But I'll also have to accept the will of the people, which is what Roe v. Wade did not do. It did not accept the will of the people because there was no will of the people. It took the will of the people away and dictated to them what would happen. So having said that, if you're sitting there and you're on the opposing side of me, you're upset about this, and you believe that you should have a right to abortion. Well, me and you don't see eye to eye. And again, this is the one topic that I can't discuss without emotion or logically or whatever. So you probably don't want to engage me because it's probably not going to be my normal level-headed self. So I'm going to give you a tip. Let's not sit down and discuss this topic one-on-one. One of us is going to get angry. And by one of us, I mean we're both going to get angry because everyone gets angry with me anyway, but I'm going to get angry right back about this topic, and I normally don't. But I'm going to give you some advice. Advice that goes against me because I don't want it around. But if that's the way you feel, great, you can do something about it now. You can go out there and fight for that. And if there's enough people out there that feel the way that you feel and don't feel the way that I feel, you'll win. And you'll have that right. That's the way it's supposed to work, through legislation. So if we want there to be a right to abortion, and by we, I mean we the people, not We, Jace included, because Jace does not. We don't want abortion. But if we, the people, want abortion, we can still do something about that. It's just going to come back to the state level, which is where it should have been to begin with, and we'll have to rule on it. So, having said that, all right. Roe v. Wade never, ever should have happened. That decision shouldn't have happened. So this is a victory today, yes, for pro-lifers, but as much as the left is going to hate me saying this is a victory for you too. And this is a victory for your rights. And this is a victory for the system. You guys are big about pro-government, pro-government, pro-government. On the right, we're usually anti-government, anti-government, anti-government. If anything, this decision today should give you guys the right to say, this is why we're pro-government. When the system works as designed, it actually works. This is why we have 3 separate branches of government. This is why we don't go to judges and say, hey, make laws. It would give them too much power. They're not supposed to create laws. They're supposed to interpret the law. So if anything, I'm celebrating as a pro-lifer, but as a pro-government person, you should be celebrating because the system did something that I think it rarely does. It works. It worked. It took way too long to work. It took almost 50 years to work. But in the end, it appears to have worked. And for a guy like me, who is pretty skeptical and pretty cynical of that, this gives you the ability to go, see, I told you so. You should trust the government more. Now, I'm not gonna cave. I'm not a believer at this point, but this is evidence for you. This is something to go into that channel. It's a good day for me, though. It's a good day for me, and it's a good day for babies everywhere. So, yeah, exciting stuff. But now let's rewind to yesterday, shall we? Let's rewind to yesterday. Let's talk about another decision that the Supreme Court ruled on. And this is the whole New York gun stuff and open carry and carrying in public in the state of New York. So essentially, let me start by again showing that on those two things, I like to talk about the things that we're not supposed to talk about, politics and religion. But I also like to believe that I can generally speak about things that I'm not a fan of and do it level-headed. But also, I like to believe that I'm open-minded. And when I say I'm a freedom advocate, a lot of people claim to be freedom advocates and liberty supporters. But I've noticed that a lot of times, as I said recently, people don't really have convictions. They have conveniences. And you'll see oftentimes that the freedoms and liberties that people support mimic the stuff that they like and the stuff that benefits them. They're for the freedoms and liberties if it's something they want to engage in or something they do engage in. But if it's not something that benefits them or interests them, then a lot of times you'll see that these freedom supporters aren't really that big of supporters of freedom. It's like, nobody needs that. Nobody needs that usually translates to I'm not interested in that and I don't want that, so no one should. I don't approach things like that. Again, Second Amendment is a great topic for us to talk about here. I'm celebrating the decision they had yesterday, even though I don't like guns. Again, I've said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. I know this upsets a lot of people on the right. You're not supposed to say you don't like guns for whatever reason if you're a conservative. You're not supposed to say it. I'm not sure why you're not supposed to say that, but as a conservative, you're not supposed to say that. But I don't like guns. And I tell you guys, I'm going to give you my true thoughts and opinions about every topic. I do not like firearms, but I'm still a Second Amendment advocate, and I'm still supporting the decision that came down yesterday. Because again, I believe in personal rights and freedoms, as long as they don't infringe on others, and I'm a constitutionalist. If it says that you have that right, whether I like it or not, I'm in favor of it. And so essentially, we've got school shootings going on. There's all kinds of dangers and things going on. It's a very contentious time. A lot of people are like, how can you rule on this with the stuff that's going on? And we rule on this with the stuff that's going on because our laws don't change what they say or what rights you have based on what some Yahoo went out and did yesterday. Sorry, I need a drink of tea. I get a little bit raspy here. So we're so reactionary. We kind of want to go out there and rule and change laws willy-nilly because something happened yesterday that was emotional and we didn't like. And I get it. But that's not what happens. And it's a dangerous precedent if we start acting like that. Well, this happened, so now we have to rule here. This happened, and we have to rule. Stuff needs to be consistent. We need to know what rules we're playing by. And if we change the laws constantly based upon an event or two events or something that happens today, then we run the risk of having to change the law again tomorrow because something else happens. And you might say, hey, if the law is wrong, we should change it. And I can agree with that concept. If the law is wrong, we do need to change it. But there's a way to change it. And again, we change laws through legislation, not through judicial review. Laws should not be written by judicial review. They interpret what's there. They do not create laws, or they're not supposed to. And that is something that the left has been trying to do for years and years and years, is using that branch of government like it's an extra legislative branch. We don't like a law, let's get the judges to change it. We want something, let's get the judges to write it. It's not what it's there for. It's not what it's there for. And so, again, we can delve more into exactly what was there yesterday and what they ruled on if you want to, but base level, essentially what came down was New York basically wanted people to go out there. Okay, the Second Amendment says you have a right to bear arms. You have a right to defend and protect yourself and your family. You have a right to self-defense, essentially. And what New York wanted to have happen was they wanted you to go out there and defend that right. They wanted you to prove that you have that right. And just saying, hey, I have the right, here it is in the Constitution, wasn't proof enough. You had to show them why you had a need to have that right. Show us why you're in danger. Show us why there's a threat. Show us why you have a real, honest to good reason why you should be carrying. If you can do that, maybe we'll pull some strings, maybe we'll do something, and we can give you one of these cards. And essentially, some citizens said, I already have a right to defend myself. I already have a right to protect myself. I already have a right to carry. Why do you need to know why I want to do what I have a right to do? If you say I have a right to free speech, why do you need to know why I want to exercise it? If I have a right to remain silent, why do you want to know why I don't want to talk? If I have a right granted to me by the Constitution, why do I need to explain myself to you why I want to exercise this right? And the state of New York said, because we said so. And so the Supreme Court essentially looked at it, and that's what they decided was that's preposterous. Your citizens do not have to explain to you why they want to observe the freedoms and protections that they are guaranteed. They have a right to defend themselves. They don't need to explain that to you. And then the second piece of that was there was already a decision ruled that extended out of the home. Basically, they already tried to say, well, you don't even do that, and you don't have this right anywhere. You need to prove that you have a need for your right. And so the court's already ruled basically like if you're in your home, you can protect. And then these citizens were like, well, it doesn't just say that I have a right to protect myself in my home. Can I not protect myself anywhere I'm at? Do I not have a right to defend myself? Like in my house, it's great to know that if I'm being threatened, you're saying, yes, I have a legal recourse to protect myself. But are you telling me that once I step out on the street, I'm target practice? If someone wants to hurt me or threaten me, I have to allow it to happen? And so, again, the courts basically ruled no. These citizens, based on the Constitution on the Constitution of the United States of America have a right to defend and protect themselves. They have a right to bear arms. They have a right to protect themselves in their homes or outside of their homes. They have a right to defend. So, again, I don't like guns. I don't think you have to like guns to be a Second Amendment advocate. I don't think you have to hate women to be pro-life. In general, I don't think we actually act like we want to punish people and be so. We want everyone to be the enemy, and not just the enemy. We want to act like everyone is evil. If you don't think and act the way I do, you're dumb. You're evil. You're more adjectives and adjectives and adjectives, and they're all not good, right? We describe people with very heinous terms. There's another one, heinous. Um, but I think, again, we need to look at what our three separate branches are designed to do. When each branch operates the way it's supposed to, when they each stay in their lanes, the framers of our Constitution, the fathers of our little nation, they were very, very intelligent men. Very intelligent men. And not everything they decided in the way the country should operate benefited them. Not everything they decided benefited the people who were making the decision process. To me, it speaks highly of them. It also speaks to the fact that they knew the dangers of having dictatorship and having anyone who can come down there and act as judge, jury, and executioner. And essentially, that's what the three branches prevent. We don't have judge, jury, and executioner. So we have people who make the laws, we have people who enforce the laws, and we have people who interpret the laws. And when it operates in that fashion, it's a cool system, and it's pretty effective. But when we have anyone trying to play 2 roles or 3 roles, it's not a very good system. And even when it operates in defense of what we want, even when we get our way, sometimes we want to celebrate it. And this is on both sides of the fence, guys. Make no mistake about it. It happens both ways. When each branch oversteps their bounds, if they're overstepping it in support of something that we like, then we're like, yay, go team. It's equally dangerous. It's still dangerous when it's happening that way. So if we're going to celebrate, we should really only celebrate when they're working as designed, and even when that design goes against us. It still is proof that the system worked. So they have ruled on a couple big things yesterday. They've ruled on things today. I'm a happy, happy fella. I'm a happy, happy fella. There's more decisions coming. I may not like those decisions. I might like some of them. I might like all of them. I don't know. We'll probably talk about many of them. But again, I told you that I was going to talk a lot about life. So I talked about guns, and why the decision was right, even though I'm not a fan of them, which again, that goes to show you, people, that it is possible. You can actually be against something and still support people's rights to do things that you don't like. I know it's a crazy concept, right? It's a crazy concept. It's not the way we're supposed to be. We're only supposed to support something if we like it, if it benefits us. If it isn't good for me, why does anybody need to do it? That's the adult way to go through life. That's the responsible take. No, it's not. That's the douchebag way to go through life. Okay? So if you don't want to be a douchebag, let people do things, even if you don't like them, as long as they're not infringing on you. Get over it. You don't have to like everything they do. To me, there's some kind of parity here. On, okay, there's a different, so conservative depends on how we're defining this, right? Libertarians are usually thought of by the left as being a very conservative group of people. Christian conservatives like me oftentimes don't look at them because in their protecting of liberty, they want to approve of things that we don't like. And Christian conservatives, again, mean that we feel oftentimes that we need to legislate morality on others. Well, I'm a very moral guy and I have very staunch opinions, but I don't really agree with my Christian brothers and sisters about that. I don't think that we need to legislate morality. I've already spoken about this and I'll continue to speak about it, you know? But this to me is where it's kind of funny because the Christian right likes to oftentimes point to the left about their hypocrisy and what they're doing that's backwards. Okay, and we don't realize that we'll do the same thing. An example is this right here. Okay, we will sit there if we are against drugs. I don't like drugs. Okay, but I actually think drugs should be legal. This is again another one of the issues, kind of like the guns. I don't need the government to say something is off limits or wrong to avoid it. Something I didn't say the other day, this is a great time to talk about this. It goes to the gay marriage thing. Okay, again, I won't marry a same-sex couple. I haven't, I will not. I don't need state and federal law, though, to mimic my personal beliefs, as long as the state doesn't dictate to me, hey, pastor, you will marry these people. As long as they understand that I have a religious objection to it and I'm not going to do that, I don't need their laws to match mine to not do it. And when we as Christians act like we have to have the laws mirror and match our viewpoint, I think something that I didn't talk about yesterday that I always am curious about and wonder. When you act like you need man's laws to agree with your law, aka God's law, the question I want to ask you is, who is Lord of your life? Who is really Lord of your life? Is God truly your God? Is the Father truly your Lord? Because it seems to me like you're saying that you need Washington, D.C. to put a stamp on it. And if you believe God is right, and if you believe that he is Lord of your life, you shouldn't need Washington to go, yep, in order to follow it. You should be able to follow it. You should be able to behave. You should be able to act accordingly because your law already says don't do it. When we legislate morality, in my opinion, we're not just saying God is right. In some ways, we are advocating that our government is God, that our government is Lord of our lives. We need their authorization in order to really feel justified. I think that's nonsense. If God says do it, that's enough for me. If God says don't do it, that's enough for me. And unless the state dictates to me that I have to disobey God, or I have to do something that goes against him, or the teachings that I adhere to, I don't care if they agree or not. If other people want to use that as justification to do what they're going to do, I don't think it's okay. But I basically shrug my shoulders and realize that's what people do anyway. The unchurched and the church alike, we all justify our behavior. We all find ways to say it's okay. I'm doing it because. If their reason is because the state allows it or the government allows it, it's an empty justification. They'd probably do it anyway. But it doesn't matter because they're doing it doesn't mean that God's going to approve of it simply because Washington, D.C. says it's all right. And they still know that God doesn't nod his head and go, yep, do it because the state says so. They know where we stand. They know where he stands. So why do we need laws to dictate that to them? They already know what's there. They're going against him as a conscious decision. They should be allowed to do that. God agrees. That's why he gave us free will. He doesn't want them to disobey. He doesn't want me to disobey. He doesn't want you to disobey. But he gave us the right to make that decision. And when the government says, hey, you can do that, I feel like all the government is advocating is what God already gave us to, free will. So I don't really see the big deal, to be honest. I do not see the big deal. So I do find it a bit hypocritical when we demand that man's law mirrors God's law. I don't need man's law to do that. I follow God. He's my supreme ruler. Why? Because he's the Lord of my life. Now, God also tells us that we should obey man's law. Now, that does not mean that if there is a law written and man says that you can do this and God says that you can't, and God says, oh, you should obey a man's law, so go ahead and do that. No. Basically, it's an extra restriction. It's not more permissive. God is not telling you you have a right to go against him or you have a right to disobey him. Essentially, what God is doing is we in the church do something really weird. It's almost like we want to hold the world more accountable than we want to hold the church. And I'll talk about this concept more in just a second to illustrate it. But we want to hold them more accountable and us less accountable, which is kind of the opposite of what Christ advocated for. When he tells us to obey man's law, we act as though we're worried that means, oh, well, it says that two guys can get married, so that they're now going to use that to say that God's okay with it and you should do it. No, he's not saying that. When he says that obey, it's an extra restriction. Essentially, what God is telling us is, if I allow you to do this, but the government steps in and says, no, you can't do that, well, then you should abide by what they say. He's putting extra pressure on us, extra restrictions on us. He's saying, when I give you freedom and they place you in shackles, understand that the shackles are there, but you don't need to worry because I still provide the ultimate freedom. You're still going to be rewarded. Your obedience will be rewarded. But render unto Caesar. Okay? So we are supposed to. But it doesn't mean that if God says, thou shalt not do something, and the government says, thou shalt can do that, if thou can do that all thou once. He's not going, well, they overruled me. They said you can do it, so go ahead. That's not the point. But that's the way we act like. We act like the world can now do this. And so we need to stop worrying about what the world can do anyway. We need to worry about what you and I can do and what you and I are willing to do and who you and I are obeying and who you and I are following. That's really what's important. We worry too much about they and them and not enough about us, we, I, me. We worry so much about what everyone else is doing and not enough about what we're doing. So having said that, if a rule comes down and tomorrow, the courts say, or legislation decides, that I'm no longer free to worship. I'm no longer free to worship the risen Savior. I'm banned from putting my offering in the offering plate. I'm banned from sharing the gospel. Well, then we have an interesting talking point, and only in this case do we have an interesting talking point. And the Bible covers this. We're protected here. Interesting talking point doesn't mean that it's up to debate. We can decide. No, God has us covered here too. He does tell us to render unto Caesar. He does tell us to obey man's law. But there is one potential caveat here. When God's law and man's law are not in agreement, God tells us, well, in this case, you should follow me. You should follow me. But again, what's important here, because you might use that and say, well, that's why we do need to legislate morality. That's why we do need to have laws that state that this is okay, because they're not in agreement, Jace. That's why we do need to ban these things. But that's not. Again, it's for us to follow. God isn't advocating that we tell everyone else not to do it. especially those who are unchurched. You see, an interesting concept that I've always talked about is that I feel like the church today sort of operates backwards. And what I mean by that is I feel like we want to evangelize to those who already have the good news, and we want to disciple those who have never been saved. If you are a born-again evangelical like I am, you should know what these words mean. For those of you who don't know what they'll mean, I'll give you a very brief explanation. I can't do it in the time that I have here. And if you're not a born-again evangelical, maybe you'll need this brief little thing. So there's the quick overview of what those means and why I think that we operate backwards. Okay, essentially, I see Christians everywhere telling the world, the unchurched, the unsaved, how to behave and what they should do. And the morality that we're telling them to do is basically go out there and act like Christians. Go out there and obey the Father. Well, there's a few problems with this, but the first problem is you're wanting them to act like spiritual beings, but they're not spiritual beings. And Paul talks about this. They can't obey the Spirit. They can't abide by the Spirit. They don't know how to obey the Father, and there's nothing in them that desires to obey the Father because their DNA is different. They haven't been born again. They haven't been remade. They're still that fleshly being that hasn't been made new. We're asking them to abide by something and to take faith in something that they don't understand. And we're not just asking them to do it. Oftentimes, we're demanding that they do it. We'll speak vile to them. Not just tell them that they need to shape up and get right, but we say hateful things while telling them to obey by rules that they really can't obey and they don't understand. We're trying to disciple them. We're trying to make them be as spiritually mature as possible. We're trying to make them be clean and holy and righteous, even though these words mean nothing to them and they don't get the concepts, they don't have a desire to do so. Strangely enough, we should be doing that to one another. If you see me doing something that you know I am not supposed to be doing, and I profess to having a relationship with Jesus Christ, you should hold me accountable. Christian, I'm giving you permission publicly for the millions and billions who may find the video. Granted, I don't think that's going to happen. This may be watched by a total of 9 people ever. But it's open. It's out there right now. It could be seen by all 8 billion plus people on planet Earth. If that happens, you don't have to wonder, is it okay if I approach Jace to slap his hand? I'm publicly telling you on behalf of the entire Earth right now, you have permission to slap my hand if I'm doing something that goes against God. You're commanded to hold me accountable, and I want you to hold me accountable. I do want to be ruled by the Spirit, and I do want my brothers and sisters in Christ to hold me accountable. It's your duty, it's your job, and I crave it. I covet it. All right? Disciple me. Disciple me. But stop discipling the lost. You can't do it anyway. On the flip side, the evangelism. You first have to evangelize someone before you can disciple them. They first have to come to know Jesus. They first have to have a relationship with him and be born again before you can disciple them. And what happens instead is, I just told you how we want to hold accountable the world. But what happens is you don't actually disciple me. I see this happen in the church time in and time again. If someone is battling with something, they're spiritually battling with something that they shouldn't be doing. Maybe it's pornography. Maybe it's alcoholism. Maybe it's adultery. Maybe it is this. Maybe it is this. And don't make a mistake about it. We will attack people. The church is good at attacking. But I have seen constantly where instead of discipling someone, instead of telling someone to remove that sin from their life, what happens is someone comes to confess. They come to their church brothers and sisters and they get up in public in front of the church and say, I have done this. That should be a time for us, yes, it's fine to applaud that they confess, but that should be a time to realize they have a demon in their life that needs to be removed. They have some separation between them and God that needs to be worked on. And they're craving that. They came for that. And instead, what do? We pat them on the back and we say, well, nobody's perfect. Don't beat yourself up, brother. It's not that big of a deal. You know Jesus loves you, right? You know he's merciful. I don't have to tell you this. You know you serve a loving God. No one's perfect. My question is, where is this message to the world? When the world messes up, those are the people that we should be telling, well, no one's perfect. Don't you know that Jesus loves you? Don't you know that God loves you? No one's perfect. Don't beat yourself up. That message can bring that person to the altar. That message can make a person crave a relationship with God and want more of it. That message could see a person be saved more than telling them how awful they are. But we don't let them know that God is good. We just tell them how terrible they are. And then our brothers and sisters in Christ who need accountability, we don't hold them accountable. We tell them how great God is and how wonderful mercy and grace are. Mercy and grace are wonderful, but we need to let the world know about mercy and grace. We need to evangelize the lost, and those of us who are found, we need to work on discipling one another. I hope this concept makes some sense to you, because it really seems lost in the modern church. But anyway, big day. Yesterday, big day today, big days coming up, and we're going to talk about them all. So until next time, I'm going to leave you, so if you're going to talk about those two things, you'll have to do it with someone else, which probably means you won't. So I guess those two things is dead until I come back.
Did you like that? Do you want more? Then you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe. Hated the show? Hated Jace? Want to put Jace on blast? That's fine too. Let us know in the comments. And whether you love us or hate us, join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for another opportunity to talk about those two things.